Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is an upcoming third-person shooter platforming video game that is being developed by Insomniac Games and published by Sony. The game is the follow-up to 2016's Ratchet & Clank, which served as a reimagining of the series and was released alongside the movie, but in terms of actual story, Rift Apart will be more connected to the Into the Nexus plotlines. Rift Apart was revealed back in 2020 and is already set for a release sometime in early to mid 2021. Let's break down how the team is planning on taking advantage of the new hardware, the new weapon systems in-game, and when we can expect the game to release. As always, all the sources will be linked in the description below, so make sure to check those out and support those original writers. Also, follow me on Twitter at FONCT2. With that out of the way, let's get into everything we know about Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Let's start with the reveal event for the game that happened in June of 2020. Insomniac and Sony released an announcement trailer for their new title. It introduced the idea of rifts and traveling through them. It also teased the story of all dimensions collapsing on each other, which, if it's not dealt with, will destroy all organic life in the universe. And the big twist at the end of the trailer was the introduction of a female Lombax. And the creative director of the project, Marcus Smith, was quick to say the team still considers this a standalone title, but Smith goes on to say further that they want to stay in the world they built leading up to Into the Nexus and want to continue that storyline rather than the Ratchet & Clank reboot storyline, because that story was told by an unreliable narrator. So if you are new to this game series, you will be able to jump in here for the first time and still understand it and play through it, but if you are a longtime fan, there will be little hints, Easter eggs, and things that make more sense for you. So this game will be connected more so to the original game's timeline and really not connected to the 2016 reboot. And the reason all of these rifts are here is because of the Dimensionator device, which was used in Into the Nexus, but at the end the device was broken and Clank took the device to potentially fix and surprise Ratchet, so someday they could use it to find the rest of the Lombax race. Marcus Smith confirmed that this will be a plot device used in-game in an interview with Games Radar. He said, quote, "The premise is that our longtime heroes are confronted by an evil arch-nemesis who wields a dimension tunneling device known as the Dimensionator. As often happens in this type of scenario, this damages the fabric of space-time and our heroes will need to use an evolving arsenal of creative firepower to try and save the universe. We don't want to give away too much, but players' jaws will hit the floor when they discover the butler did it." Shoot, I said too much. So clearly this game will have aspects that, if you've been following the franchise for a while, will pay off in this title, but you don't necessarily need to understand everything to go into this game and enjoy it. That's where I'm going to leave that discussion, but if you want to hear more about it, I'm sure there are videos and articles covering more connections to previous games. I know fans have already broken down some of these areas that they did show off in the trailer, which I will get back to a little bit later in this video. Later on, Sony did confirm that the new female Lombax will be playable in-game, and the final reveal event related to this was the extended gameplay demo that was released in August of 2020. As we get further into this video as well, we will break down the weapons we see in the gameplay. So for now, all I want to say is around the same time they also released 10 minutes of gameplay. And of course, the game was announced as a PlayStation 5 exclusive, but it was going to be a true PlayStation 5 exclusive. And I mean, this won't come to PlayStation 4 like Miles Morales or the rumors about the new God of War potentially coming to the PS4. This game will only ever be on the PlayStation 5, and the team is using the extra hardware from the PlayStation 5 to make a game with a lot of new features that were not in previous titles. The first being that the game will feature a 4K and HDR mode that is technically considered the visually enhanced mode, but there will be another option as well, which is a performance mode that ensures the game will run at a smoother FPS rather than focusing on sheer resolution, so it will give you a 1080p but 60 frames per second resolution, which is something we haven't seen in the Ratchet & Clank franchise in quite a few games. The team has also said because of the PlayStation 5's SSDs or solid state drives, It will effectively remove loading screens, and they describe the transition as near instant in less than a second. And they mention that this is also only happens when traveling between planets, so once you're on a planet, it should be very seamless and you shouldn't see any stutters or lag between different areas on the same planet. But traveling between them, you will see a little bit, but still less than a second, so you really shouldn't notice and it shouldn't take you out of the immersion of the game. And of course, the team had to develop for the PlayStation 5's new controller and triggers. The team has said that the game will feature adaptive triggers from the controller, which will make each weapon have a unique response when using it in terms of vibration and feel of the weapon. One example of this Marcus Smith described was the Enforcer double barrel shotgun. Players can pull the trigger halfway to fire one of the barrels and hold it down all the way to fire both. And tension is felt on the trigger regardless of what playstyle is used. And the team closes out by saying they're also very proud of their sound designers using the 3D audio, which they say adds immersion to the game while playing through the different worlds and fighting different enemies. So depending on your home setup with sound, you can hear things behind you, to the side of you, up and below you. So it's really cool that they're really just trying to add as many features as possible and really make it an experience to play this game, more inclined to a cinematic experience than just a traditional game. Next, we can discuss the gameplay details that have been given about the title so far. The two main categories we will discuss are the weapons the team has shown off so far, and I will finally be circling back to the worlds we have seen in the trailer, plus other comments the team has made. So far, the team has shown off a few weapons we can expect in-game. The first weapon is the burst pistol, which does exactly what it sounds like. In the gameplay that was shown off, which is in pre-alpha, so everything is subject to change, the pistol works similar to guns we have seen in this world before, but this time the pistol fires acid bullets. In the same interview mentioned above with Games Radar, Smith said, quote, "Our burst pistol, for example, can be fired accurately by pulling the trigger up to a middle threshold, or you can pull through to go all out at the cost of accuracy. It's much more intuitive to have this secondary function directly on the trigger than to have players learn different buttons for it. It's that much easier for you to get into the flow of combat and execute advanced strategies without having to think of controls." Which once again calls back to different play strategies that will be available and are an option because of some of this new Sony technology, and I don't think players will think about it as much when playing, but they can get in a groove of knowing when to do a half pull versus full pull. Another new weapon is the Enforcer, which we did mention before, but this weapon is essentially a double barrel shotgun, but instead of traditional buckshot, the gun now shoots orange lightning bolts, and the barrels can be fired one at a time or both barrels depending on the number of enemies and situation. There's really not too much we have to say about this. It's similar to, once again, other guns that we have seen in the series, depending on how far you want to get back into the world. So let's just keep moving on. The next weapon is the Shatter Bomb, which is a grenade we will acquire relatively early into the game, and it creates a purple energy effect that will destroy enemies. And the final weapon the team has shown off is the Topiary Sprinkler, which is a sprinkler as the name says, and it shoots waters at enemies that makes plant life sprout over the enemy where the water hit them, and finally turns the enemy into a hedge essentially, or just a full plant, which is definitely one of the more unique and zany weapons we have seen so far. And I want to close out by saying, of course, there will still be more new weapons we haven't seen that the team hasn't shown off yet. We'll still have the Omni Wrench, which is a constant through all the games. And I expect a lot more surprises as the team gets closer to release and once we have the game and can start playing around with it. And finally, moving on to some of the worlds we will see in-game, one of the most quoted responses from Insomniac is when they announced the game. They said this game will take players to never before seen planets, but also alternate dimension versions of old favorites. GameXplain has a great trailer breakdown where they take their best guesses at all the planets and dimensions we see in the announcement trailer. And the team over there, I think, understands a lot of this world and really did their research when trying to understand which worlds they showed off in the trailer. They think the first area we see is Sargasso from Tools of Destruction, and then they think we transition to Torin 4, which is a planet from A Crack in Time, And then we go to Kerwin, which is the cityscape planet from Ratchet and Clank 1. And then we go back to Torn 4, but this time during the day and a slightly different angle. And then we go to this kind of futuristic city, which some have speculated to be Canal City or potentially something completely new. And then finally we end on Ordolis, which is from Tools of Destruction. Obviously these are just guesses and it doesn't mean that these are right, but at least some seem likely given Insomniac teasing that we will be seeing returning worlds, so it makes sense that they could be going all the way back to some of these game worlds we haven't seen since Ratchet and Clank 1. The game director Mike Daly said about the trailer, quote, "All those worlds that you're traveling through during those sequences are real, fully fleshed out worlds that you could just like stop and play in under other circumstances." And it's a small quote, but once again it all sounds great. The team over at Insomniac really knows how to make great games, and it should be exciting to see how this game turns out. And all these worlds they have created where if you go into a rift, you could stay in that world for who knows how long, exploring, playing around with it before traveling to others. And all of the worlds, gameplay, and interviews are interesting, but the biggest question people still have been asking this entire time is what about the release of the title? At first, the team was saying that the game was launching sometime within the PS5 launch window, which really doesn't mean anything because who knows what Sony considers the PS5 launch window. It really could be any time. And the only real evidence we have of when this could be is if you remember infamous Second Son, which was marketed the same way. Sony said it was going to be released sometime during the PS4 launch window, and it ended up releasing in March after a fall console release. So we could see the game potentially in March or before March, but then in November, Sony released a PlayStation 5 launch trailer and it included moments from Rifts Apart, and the small text at the bottom of the screen said the anticipated release for Ratchet and Clank is expected sometime in the first half of 2021. So technically that broadens it out a little bit more and could explain why we haven't seen marketing start to pick up. They could be waiting for a more summer release, really, and it would still technically fit within the PS5 launch window just because we aren't sure when that really is. So what should we expect from Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart in the next year? Well, for one, we can for sure expect a release. It makes sense Insomniac is trying to space out their releases after their recent fall release for Spider-Man Miles Morales, and their games are usually a pretty big push for Sony and PlayStation consoles. There have been rumors that the game could release in February, but if that was the case, I would have anticipated that we should have started to see marketing pick up, and that seems very unlikely unless Sony starts to push the title very soon after this video is released. I think most community members are also excited to see a story continuation of the games up to this point, and the fact Insomniac is going to ignore the reboot has a lot of fans excited that we're going to get back to the world we already know. And I am personally excited for this game to release, and for the most part that is everything we know about Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and where I'm going to end this video. Make sure to like and share, subscribe for weekly gaming news, and I will see you guys in the next one.